Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Public Sector Debating Competition. I'm Tamika Gunmighty, Communication Specialist in the Transformation Implementation Unit, and I will be your moderator for today's match. After 2 rounds of exciting matches, we're now down to the final 8 teams. Jamaica Customs Agency, Jamaica Information Service, Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Ministry of National Security, Statistical Institute of Jamaica, and Victoria Jubilee Hospital. Let's give the teams a round of applause. A very warm welcome to those of you joining us on our social media platforms. In this match today, we have teams who were a part of our final 4 teams in our last staging: the Ministry of National Security on the proposition side and Victoria Jubilee Hospital on the opposition side. At this time, I will invite the proposition to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trezana Gordon from the Ministry of National Security.
Good afternoon, everyone. The name is Andre Cohen from the Ministry of National Security.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Andre Wall from the Ministry of National Security.
Okay, 2 Andres. Okay, now we invite the opposition team to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deandra Facey. I'm the first speaker for the Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Good afternoon. My name is Desiree Denton Sadler, and I will be the second speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lillian McDonald, the third speaker from Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Thank you so much, teams. Now we'll have our partners from JADE, the Jamaica Association for Debating and Empowerment. We'll have them introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jermaine Barrett, and I will be your chair adjudicator for this match.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roshana Jarrett, and I'll be your wing adjudicator for the match.
Good afternoon. I'm Ravon Thomas Matthews, and I'll be your second wing adjudicator.
Thank you so very much, judges. And now I will hand over to the judges for today's proceedings. Good luck, teams.
Thank you very much, Tamika. All right, teams, we are ready. Are we ready? Yes. Excellent. That sounds very good. But before we get started, just a reminder of the essential rules with respect to the time allocations and the protected times. So the first speaker gets 8 minutes, the second speaker 7 minutes, the third speaker 5 minutes, and the reply speaker gets 3 minutes. The first and last minutes are protected. Those will be indicated by an audible sound of a bell. Yes? Okay, the bell is turned down. Good. Right. So when you hear that, it means that you've spoken for 1 minute. When you hear it again, it means that you have 1 minute remaining. When you have consumed the allotted time, you will hear 2 dings of the bell in rapid succession, right? Sounding like that. And you might hear that midway you're completing a sentence. So we grant you 15 seconds extra to wrap up that point and come down. At the end of that 15 seconds, you'll hear the continuous dinging of the bell. In between the first and last minutes, thank you, in between the first and last minutes, points of information are welcomed. In fact, they are encouraged. We want to hear you ask points of information as a part of how you engage in a debate, all right? Note, though, that no points of information are allowed for the reply speeches. Are there any questions? No? We're ready. Well, let's get the debate started. We call upon at this time the first proposition speaker to open the debate. Hear, hear.
Honorable judges, my worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My opponents, alone is never the best option when togetherness is available. The strength of togetherness to do much more is what the CSME represents for the region and for Jamaica. On this premise, the proposition unequivocally supports the moot, be it resolved that Jamaica should remain a member of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME. There are two key terms in this debate that must be clearly defined to frame the context of this debate. The term remain, in its simplest form, means to not leave. The CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME, is an arrangement among the CARICOM member states for the creation of a single enlarged economic space through the removal of restrictions resulting in the free movement of goods, services, persons, capital, and technology. And it offers or confers the right of CARICOM nationals to establish a business in any participating CARICOM member state. Given the definitions, the proposition through the redefined moot posits that Jamaica should not leave the arrangement among the CARICOM member states for the creation of a single enlarged economic space through the removal of restrictions. Ladies and gentlemen, the CSME is like CARICOM's shipping vessel, which set sail to the land of economic prosperity with 12 members of CARICOM, including Jamaica, on board, working together to ensure that the vessel gets to its destination with all the members arriving prosperously. This vessel, my opponent, has had and continues to trek across the treacherous waters infested with sharks ripping away preferential trade agreements, hurricanes of globalization, and the crashing waves of economic shocks, such as recession. What the opposition would want us to believe this afternoon, honorable judges, is that faced with these treacherous waters of economic challenges, Jamaica's best option is to jump ship. The proposition says not so. We strongly believe that Jamaica's best option is to weather the storms together, not alone. As such, honorable judges, I, the first speaker, will examine the CSME's philosophy, the potential benefits, and its impact on Jamaica. My second speaker will examine the implications of jumping ship and leaving the CSME, while my third speaker will outline the plan better leveraging the CSME for Jamaica's economic prosperity. My opponents, we are not here to say the CSME is perfect, as I'm sure you will posit in this debate. No union can claim perfection. And Jamaica itself, my opponent, is not perfect. The economic principle, though, that undermines the CSME is sound and must be rigorously defended. The CSME as a concept
Point of information.
not at this moment, must be considered in its fundamental form an economic philosophy adopted with the intent of collective economic prosperity. Particularly, the philosophy of the CSME is propelled by 5 regimes, which are like the engines of this ship. These are 1, free movement of skills and labor, which allows for the creation of increased employment opportunities and improved standards of living. 2, the free movement of goods, which allows, again, for increased production and trade in goods and services in a combined market of over 14 million people, and also for the production of competitive products for better quality and prices. 3, free movement of services, providing enterprises and individuals with market opportunities for investment and jobs. 4, free movement of capital, and 5, the right to the freedom of establishment, which allows for more foreign direct investments, FDIs. Honorable judges, any alternative to staying on this CSME ship proffered by the opposition must have these 5 engines on them, or we're going to join a sea. The solution, my opponents, is not to jump ship, not to change ship, or even rebrand the ship in leaving CSME, but rather strengthen Jamaica's domestic framework to ensure maximum capitalization on the offerings of CSME. My opponents, regional integrations similar to CSME works especially as a single market and economy, most notably the European Union. Why? Because countries are aware that we can achieve way more together than alone. Simply.
Point of information.
Go ahead.
The European Union, yes, integration does work, but are you aware that although the CSME has the same sort of regime, that it has not been able to implement?
We are aware that as small developing states in in CARICOM, yes, we have not yet reached the full potential of what the European Union, would have reached. And that is because, as I said, we're small developing states, and therefore it takes longer because our reach and our capital will not be the same as those large states. But the potential is still there and therefore can be. My opponents, regional integration. Therefore, the proposition maintains that Jamaica's best avenue to economic prosperity is through the regimes of the CSME. And as such, Jamaica should remain a member of the CSME. Honorable judges, Jamaica has experienced the hurricanes of globalization, but the union of the CSME has buffered the effects on the nation. We have not been submerged and continue to persevere. The opposition therefore cannot deny that the CSME has been beneficial to Jamaica. Further, they cannot deny that there are even greater benefits to be derived as the CSME continues to evolve, grounded by the 5 regimes of freedom and right mentioned earlier. So what are some of these benefits, you may ask? 1, the CSME provides small developing states with the best avenue of economic growth and development when faced with the threat of globalization. Regional economic integration provides additional development opportunities and increased bargaining power for member states, not at this time, as part of their national development effort, as small states are better able to negotiate with regional groupings and superpowers as a group than individually. Evidence in trade deals negotiated with REP, Costa Rica, Venezuela, etc. 2, the CSME has provided Jamaica with FDIs. 2 notable investments are the acquisition of Carib Cement by Trinidad Cement Company and the presence of Trinidad's Massey Group in our domestic manufacturing sector. Similarly, Jamaican companies such as JMB, NCB, and Seprod have operations in countries such as Trinidad, Barbados, and Guyana, making use of the access to markets in these areas. Additionally, conservative estimates have indicated that over 60,000 Jamaicans live in the CARICOM region, again, enjoying the benefits of free movement in the region. Honorable judges, if the opposition advances the cause for Jamaica to exit the CSME, they must demonstrate an empirical economic framework that exceeds the growth potential of the CSME, while providing greater value than the regimes that allow for free movement of skills, labor, goods, services, capital, and the right of establishment. The proposition maintains that Jamaica must remain in the CSME. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those arguments. We now call upon the first opposition speaker to open the case on behalf of their team. Hear, hear.
Good afternoon, judges, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Divorce Court. Today we will decide, should we leave our partner or should we continue in this non-beneficial relationship, aka marriage? Now, the proposition, we agree with your definition of terms. However, we wish to add a definition of a key term, should. According to the Oxford Dictionary, should is defined as an obligation to duty or correctness. The moot is then redefined. As they have so said, we, the opposition, stand resolute in saying that Jamaica is not obligated to continue as a existing member of the CSME. The opposition stands resolute against the moot, and we will prove through empirical facts, through stating examples and providing the framework in which the proposition spoke of that is necessary. Now, Jamaica must exit this relationship in order to enter into more blissful trade operations. As first speaker, I will be addressing the disparities of the CSME and the necessity of separation. As the second speaker will speak of the economic benefits of this separation, and the third speaker will speak of the sociocultural benefits of exiting. Now, unaware to my opponents is an hidden gem within the Caribbean. Jamaica should separate and become an independent trader. Within the Caribbean exist trade opportunities through mediums of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. This is an alternative to the CSME. It has a 42 years reputation of a reliable system that has been established. It has established policies, working courts, an aviation system that boosts the propensity of trade within that region, and a single currency that is stable in comparison to our own. As you may think, there is also a central banking system that offers potential of investment loans between these Caribbean islands in this current agreement. Now, an example of such a country that enjoys this benefit is Dominica. Now, Dominica is a part of the OECS, not taken. Dominica is a country that is a part of the OECS that enjoys these benefits of investments and trade. Even if we were to remain within the CSME, the Jamaican nation and government would be robbing itself and its manufacturers of the potential earning possibilities that exist as an individual trader. Trading for ourselves, nation first, economy first. All for one is not one for all. My opponents, this simply means, as a nation, we must look for prospective trading mediums, new, not stick to the old because we already know it. We're not discussing CARICOM. CSME is an initiative of CARICOM. It is the initiative which is the source of this discussion, not the benefits of CARICOM holistically. The initiative, the trade movement we are discussing. Now, as I said before, my opponents, Jamaica must consider these new prospective mediums that will offer multiple streams of income for the government, better living conditions, and protect our manufacturers, because all persons in Jamaica matter and our manufacturers matter. Now, within the CSME, there is dominance and monopoly. Now, as this dominance and monopoly grows, the application of its policies are now left up to the contributors to the monopoly. As is, according to a 2018 article, the CSME, at time of reckoning, these factors have contributed to the dominance and monopoly issues that face the CSME. As is, there are operational biases towards macro contributors such as Trinidad and Tobago and other large contributors, and there are smaller benefits to Jamaica and those smaller contributors to the trade system. This dominance is then seconded by the macro producers hiding, not sharing their trade information, their fiscal policies that smaller nations would need to grow and plan and form investment schemes for themselves. You are denying the people of the right, according to you, free movement of people, free movement of trade. Everybody should be in the same boat. It is not true. It is simply not true. This also is compounded by the lack of accountability and good governance practices taken.
My opponent, are you aware of the fact that the OECS is smaller than the CSME?
I am aware. However, they have a consistent, reliable method that is working, and the Jamaican government owes the citizens that ability to access that reliable framework. If trade must be for all, it has to be consistent, it has to be reliable and replicable. They have a 42 years history of replicability. CSME has a 36 years history of failure. Now, as I was saying, within the CSME, this dominance has caused many problems. Now, since 2019 to 2021, there have been 36 internal complaints that has been filed. The complaints alone, not compliance rate, complaint rate is 83.8%. Of which 34 were issued against the small states who were complaining that others were dominating their trade, their finances, their investment schemes were being dominated by others.
Information?
None taken. Now, through the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is the CSME's Court of Justice, we see all of these cases languishing into infinity, where people are now paying off, but there is actually no punishment. Wouldn't it be better if there was a consequence within an agreement that is general for all, not just some? Now, an example of this is the Trinidad and Tobago are given first preference in almost everything. They have the oil, they have the liquid gas, they set the tone of the market. This is unfair to the micro contributors. Even if we were to continue to stay, The CSME has provided no change, no remediation that is long-standing within 36 years. My confidence is not captured by 36 years of marriage with no benefits, with no policies, with no good governance, where my partner is now fraternizing with others that he considers to be better. They have come together now and taken all of my resources in this marriage and has turned it against me. The second point I must make is that discrimination occurs within the CSME. The Jamaican people are discriminated, or manufacturers are discriminated. At ports of entry, Jamaicans have been detained and deported. Even so, an example is in Barbados, where in 2013, 13 Jamaicans were deported back to Jamaica. They had their visas, they had their entrance documents. They were turned back by who? Immigration, for arbitrary reasons that were more practice than policy. Our manufacturers' goods are held on these wharves for extended period of times, even though they pay 25% upfront. An example of this is the Tasty Patty scandal in 2004, in which the Tasty Patties were withheld at the wharves in Trinidad and Tobago by phytosanitary measures that TNT themselves do not have to rely on. The World Trade Organization helped us. Those patties are all across the Caribbean. I'm simply saying in closing, Your Honor, we have been discriminated against as a country. Even if we were to stay in the CSME, our people still are being discriminated, or manufacturers are still being discriminated. There is no equity of trade. It is not one for all if Jamaica is the one that is not benefiting, but getting the most hits in the entire CSME. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. We go now to the proposition again to hear this time from their second speaker. Hear, hear.
Honorable judges, we have to raise up some points that we take issue with. The idea that trade agreements are conflated to be synonymous with a single market economy. The opposition says that it is time for us to find better trade routes. And within the CSME, there is still allowance for us to have other trade arrangements while being a part of the CSME, as evidenced by the fact that only 5 or 3% of our exports as Jamaican citizens are within the CSME. The other 97% is outside of the CSME. So the CSME makes allowances for us to have trade arrangements outside of the framework. What we must allow ourselves to do, however, is to make sure that we continue to leverage the benefits of the CSME while at the same time being able to trade with other states outside of the CSME. There's another point that was raised, and the OSCS, and that's something that we hope that the opposition can provide some clarification on. But we note well that there are also member states that are a part of the CSME, that's also a part of the OSCS. And so there is an opportunity to participate in the gains of the OSCS while participating in the gains of the CSME. There's also something that we must make sure that we fix. We are talking about the CSME on two fronts: what is currently in space or in place, and also the philosophy of the CSME and the potential benefits that are to be derived. So rightly, we are having some challenges with the CSME because, again, we're talking about small economies that are jump-starting their approach towards regional integration with different levels of development, different levels of maturity, different levels of legislation and economic independence. Hold a second, please, my opponent. So within that framework, we ought to allow the framework to mature, so that we can maximize the benefits that could be derived from it, while at the same time trading with other territories and within other frameworks. Even if we were to adopt the opposition's argument, there are still some benefits that we currently enjoy under the CSME, which we wish to raise a little later in this debate. Honorable judges, my most worthy opponents, and ladies and gentlemen, good day to you all. We stand resolute in our mood that Jamaica should remain in the Caribbean single market and economy. And I want to just raise up some of the implications of exiting this framework. You see, when we take a look at a Golding report that was published in 2017, we have seen some areas that have been lifted up for us to appreciate. When we looked at the report, it showed us that only only 15% of our total imports were imports against the CARICOM community. Only 15%. And these 15% benefited from the 5 regimes that we raised earlier. And what that meant is that trading within the Caribbean, the CSME framework, allowed us to benefit from trade which was at a lower cost than what would have been supplied on the local market, as well as what would be outside of trading with non-CARICOM territories. So what we're saying then is that by virtue of the CSME, the local consumer is able to benefit from greater value in terms of goods and services procured, while at the same time having the opportunity to leverage or to cause there to be an improvement in competition locally.
Point of information.
Accepted.
Are you aware that Trinidad is currently outsourcing and outpricing our manufacturers in the supermarket by providing cheaper goods than Jamaica is able to leverage in their own country?
Thank you. And here is, this is where I'll have to give you some correction, my most worthy opponent. In a single marketing economy, it is driven by what we call absolute and competitive advantage. So rightly, Trinidad having the opportunity and the facilities to produce at a cheaper rate, they would absolutely be more competitive in the local market. It is now the responsibility of Jamaica to rightly respond by setting the framework for us to be even more competitive than Trinidad. So rightly within a single market economy, when there's economic integration across the board, we will have a situation where you will have goods and services being offered most competitively, even across borders. I continue. Trinidad offers 75% of our trade is crude oil with Trinidad, which means that, and the Golding Report tells us that were we to trade with anybody else, this crude oil would have been more expensive. And what would have happened then, ladies and gentlemen, is that in the cost of manufacturing, the cost of travel, the cost of existing in this space would have been more difficult and more expensive if we had exited the CSME. Ladies and gentlemen, in the face of these benefits, we simply cannot exit the CSME. For better trade arrangements will come with tariffs. And we understand that tariffs, the incidence of taxes that the consumer will have to pay for those tariffs that are introduced. So in adopting a framework that exists, the CSME, it introduced now a market failure to the local consumer. Honorable judges, let us go a little further to what the Golding Report says about our benefits, as it were, and the issues with the CSME. They said in large part, our economic misfortunes, our Jamaica, have been the result of our own domestic policies. The bane of the issue is clear to us. It is clear to us lies in Jamaica's level of competitiveness rather than its trade with CARICOM. This is what the Golding Report says. It tells us then, therefore, that the CSME, while there are some inequalities across member states, Jamaica cannot blame the CSME for being competitive. Jamaica has only itself to blame for the inequalities it introduces in manufacturing and as well in the delivery of goods and services. Even if we were to adopt the opposition's position, any good framework must be buttressed by the very economic reforms due for implementation under the CSME. The same issues that we want to, the same things we want to benefit from are also available under the CSME once fully established. And we would be better served to pursue the full implementation of the CSME instead of the laborious process of consultations, feasibility studies, policy development, negotiations, and treaty needful to engage another single market economic framework. Jamaica simply doesn't have the time nor the resources to pursue a route that takes us back to a CSME rebrand. Honorable judges, no better herring, no better barrel. We must stay in the CSME and leverage the maximum benefits that it affords. It is better than what the opposition postulates. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. We go once again to the opposition side to hear, this time from their second speaker. Hear, hear.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Second Speaker, you spoke about the Golding report in details. And you said that, Minister Golding said that Jamaica's level of competitiveness is the reason why we're where we are. But you also said that because Trinidad has more resources, then they would do better. How can we be expected to compete with a country that has far more resources than we do and still expect to come out on the same level as they do? That doesn't seem fair to me. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica is under no obligation to remain in the CSME because the benefits, as a matter of fact, the economic benefits that were promised with this integration, we have not begun to realize. As mentioned by first speaker on the proposition, the CSME is built on 5 core regimes. Now, Jamaica continues to be at a disadvantage in 3 of these 5 regimes: free movement of goods, free movement of services, and free movement of goods and capitals, and the provision of services. Now, I will show you how we've been disadvantaged in the free movement of goods and capitals. At the moment, there is a massive deficit or trade imbalance between Jamaica and other CSME member states. Now, CARICOM says, the Secretariat of CARICOM says that this trade deficit has almost always existed between Jamaica and other CSME member states. Now, on Statin's website, we read that Jamaica's imports from CSME member states far exceeds our exports to these member states. Now, this has contributed to a widening of this trade deficit.
Point of information.
Go right ahead.
We're the opponent. Jamaica has 60% of its local economy in the informal economy. How do you expect us to leave the CSME and then perform better economically if it is that we are riddled with all of these issues affecting our local economy?
I will tell you. Hold on a moment. I'll touch it. Don't rush it. So the CARICOM Secretariat reports, Mr. Speaker, that Jamaica imports more from CSME countries, member states, than it exports. Now, in 2018, the CARICOM Secretariat says that Jamaica imported $249.3 million worth of goods from CSME member states, but we only exported $44.4 million. That is a deficit of $244.9 million. It means that we have potentially lost $244.9 million in revenue because we cannot export as much as we import. An example of this trade deficit is reported on the... Just a moment, let me finish. Is reported on the IMF e-library, where we read that in 2018, Jamaica imported $166.2 million worth of goods from Trinidad. But to that country, we only exported $5.2 million worth of goods. Now, that is a trade deficit of $161 million. What could Jamaica do with $161 million? Now, in 2019, that trade deficit widened to $424 million because we imported $437 million worth of goods, but we only exported $13 million worth. Now, if we were to remain in the CSME, Jamaica would continue to import more than we export. Now, if we're importing more than we're exporting, it means that the increase for the demand for foreign currency in our island will increase. Now, if that demand is increased, it means that our value, our Jamaican dollar, will devalue. And if it devalues, then we know that inflation is going to go up. So now, Mr. Speaker,
point of information.
This one-sided, go ahead.
We have a trade deficit with everyone we trade with.
Not true, but I'll get to that later. This one-sided relationship between Jamaica and the CSME member states, it has to stop. And we have to make a move towards more productive alternatives.
Point of information.
For an example, let me finish. For an example, with the USA and with Canada, we have maintained a trade surplus. The International Trade Center reports that Jamaica has continued to maintain a trade surplus with these countries. Not only do we maintain a surplus, but these countries provide aid to Jamaica. Now, instead of chasing the potential that CSME has to give us, why don't we capitalize on what we already are getting so that the government can meet its obligation of providing a better economy for the people of Jamaica? That's our obligation. Right? It makes no sense, Mr. Speaker, to continue in a relationship where you keep giving, and your partner keep taking. At this point, a divorce from CSME is necessary for betterment of our economy and for a better standard of living for our Jamaican people. My second point then is that Jamaica continues to be at a disadvantage in the free movement of capitals within CSME. Pursuant, we know, to Articles 82 and 83 of the revised Treaty of Chagaranos, CSME member states participate in duty-free trading. Now, because the Jamaican dollar has less value than most member states, we pay more for export than they do for export, meaning that although we're exporting less, we're still losing financially. Matter of fact, there is a quota on trading between Jamaica and other CSME member states. There's a quota on alumina, and there's a quota on agricultural products. Our top export products are alumina and agricultural products. Now, there is no way that we can export enough to level this import deficit when we can't export what we want to export. So therefore, our farmers are at a disadvantage. What happens is that the Jamaica Trade Policy Review indicates that our Jamaican agricultural sector and our farmers struggle to compete against these cheaper imported products. And we find in a Jamaica Gleaner article that, local produce takes a beating from appealing imports. Some supermarket managers were interviewed, and they said their client prefers imported products because they're cheaper and more appealing. No, the proposition will come and tell you that cheaper products mean better life for Jamaicans because they can afford these things. It doesn't, not in this context. Isolated, yes, but with CSME, cheaper imported products means a higher demand for imported goods. It means we're going to import more than we're exporting continually. It means our dollar is going to devalue and inflation is going to go up, and the standard of living for Jamaicans will decrease. Our GDP will decrease, and nobody will be interested in investing in us because we will have nothing to offer. Instead of staying in the CSME, let us continue with like the UK, where we have quota-free and duty-free trading. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. We now call upon the third speaker from the proposition side to respond. Hear, hear.
My opponents noted that in some areas, Jamaica has a trade surplus while still being in the CSME. So why not stay if there is already a benefit? Additionally, the CSME does not preclude us from establishing other trade relationships. Greetings, honorable judges, ladies and gentlemen. As third speaker, I will outline a policy framework to demonstrate how Jamaica can better leverage the CSME for economic prosperity. Fundamentally, this debate asks the question, what value is there to remain in the CSME? We argue that the CSME provides a foundation where we can build a stronger economy through careful economic planning by leveraging our absolute and competitive advantage. And so the CSME provides ease of access to similar low to middle income economies that serves as an opportunity for Jamaica to utilize our advantages. Honorable judges.
Information.
Not yet taken. Honorable judges, despite Jamaica's low competitiveness in manufacturing, we, however, have a competitive and absolute advantage in the export of services that we can use as a source for export regionally. Jamaica is known for her prowess in the areas of sports, creative arts, and music. In these areas, several of our neighbors have articulated a need to strengthen these services in their economies. This provides Jamaica with an untapped golden opportunity to explore exporting our technical expertise through the establishment of Jamaican-led sports, music, dance, and other service franchises across the Caribbean, which is expected to earn us billions of US dollars.
Point of information.
Taken.
Which current CSME policy allows Jamaica to do that?
So, the CSME policy has the right of establishment as well as the freedom of labor. And so, with those two policies, we can have the ease of doing business. Judges, opponents, and colleagues, it is better to build and tap into the potential underdeveloped markets in our neighborhood where we already have a framework where we can leverage for our economic prosperity, utilizing our strengths and regional opportunities. Jamaica should also remain in the CSME because if applied as intended, we can develop strong macroeconomic foundations that can result in the growth of our GDP. As mentioned before, Jamaica's economic problems are largely as a result of our doing, not the CSMEs. We therefore recommend, not taken, we therefore recommend that we advance some recommendations to strengthen our economic fundamentals according to the Golding Report, particularly taking effective steps towards macroeconomic convergence, including a fiscal responsibility framework. As a method of good practice, we cite the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, where collectively they embarked on a policy, on a fiscal and monetary policy, where they piled up reserves for several reasons, particularly to include the cushioning against external shocks and financial crisis. And in piling up these reserves as an economic bloc, this resulted in the ASEAN region being able to stave off the negative effects of the 2008 financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. And so adopting a regional fiscal and monetary policy framework has the direct impact of maintaining macroeconomic stability in the face of economic shocks that small and medium-sized economies like Jamaica have a high vulnerability. And so we therefore reiterate our position to remain in the CSME.
Thank you very much. Third speaker representing the proposition team, Ministry of National Security. We now invite the third speaker from the opposition to respond and to close the case, the substantive case, I should say, for that team. Hear, hear.
Corrections, my opponent. We did not say that we have trade surplus from the CSME. We said Canada and the USA. Expectations, expectations, expectations. That's all we're getting from CSME. Togetherness to do just more is correct. However, we are yet to see the more. Enlarged economic state benefiting who? You mean Trinidad and Tobago? Potential benefits need to become they need to get life. They need to really get into it and stop being potential. CSME is lingering way too long. Time come no man. Over so many years, listen to me, man. We come here with a bill of divorce. All we've been getting is repeated revision of this treaty. Come on now. Jamaica is still awaiting the promised benefits from the CSME. We need the divorce now, right now. You promised free movement of labor among member states, but we have only experienced hassles when we try to move, plus being unskilled is a disadvantage. Why should we remain? For continued lack of accountability? Complaint rate between 2019 and 21 was 83.8%. Trinidad and Tobago is reaping all the benefits. Preferential trading. Where are the incentives, the free trading, the pooling of economies for gain? We all have received, since this union is unreliable, all we have received is unreliable trading, manufacturers' losses, fragmentation, lack of accountability and good governance, increased potential for social unrest, not to mention the price and personal discrimination at the ports of entries. We have experienced deportation for unclear reasons in 2004, 2009, 2011, 2013, 2016, trade wars instead of the implementation of a beneficial free trading among member states. And you're trying to trick us into remaining in this for what? More discriminations, disgrace, being detained and tarnish our records like what happened to Miss Mary. And after all of this, she was deported. Not to mention one of our prominent businessmen, Mr. Mahfoud, was also deported without reason. You have the gall to ask us to remain in such a union. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. The CSME has influenced negative migration among our skilled workforce. Since 2007, upward trend in migration patterns for Jamaica's skilled workforce who are finding employment both within and outside of the CSME member states. This has led to brain drain, poor socioeconomic conditions, imbalances with equal opportunity hire, better pay rates within companies and public sector. But we have seen no reciprocal increase of our labor force here with the CSME coming to our shores. Not accepted. In 2007, over 200 Jamaicans were certified by Trinidad and Tobago. But to date, we have no evidence to even suggest that Jamaica is reciprocating these benefits. Instead, all we have is potential. Potential. We'll be doing this, we'll be doing that. And the increases of unemployment is continuing. If we continue along this path of negative spikes in migration of our workforce, our GDP will be impacted. 97.6% of our GDP comes from our trade. Show us the evidence. How has the CSME filled this gap? Can they? Or are they waiting for more revisions to be made for this to happen? Too many loose ends with the CSME after over so many years. We must divorce ourselves, build a more blissful and meaningful and productive relationship with our other viable sources, such as the OECS. Show us the success from CSME. Are you implying that we should remain in a union of mutual poverty? The last time I checked, 12 plus 0 equals 0. Are you implying that we should stay in such a state? Shared prosperity was promised. Where is it? We need a divorce now. How many more revisions of the treaties do we need to have before an initial reason for which the CSME was created is realized? Time come now. We need the divorce now.
Thank you very much. We definitely hear your appeal for a divorce. I'm not sure if I'm minded to grant it, though. Anyway, thank you so very much for concluding the substantive case on behalf of Team Opposition, Victoria Jubilee Hospital. All right, we're going to pause for 1 minute now to allow you to refresh yourselves and to put that finishing touch on the reply speech. At the end of the 1 minute, we will come back with the reply speaker from the opposition side, followed by that from the proposition.
Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. The proposition made points around the pursuit of integration as necessary, but the pursuit of fragmentation is what we have gotten. The pursuit of biased trade policies, the pursuit of withholding our goods and services at the wharfs, the pursuit of discrimination for our manufacturers and our people. May I continue? You said that we need a competitive edge. How can our competitive edge be realized when we are placed in a market that the bias already exists, that we will not move forward, our people nor our manufacturers? This 60% that you spoke of that is intrinsically ours, that we should amplify our services, our people are being turned back, even with their legal documentation. You mentioned that Trinidad should have a competitive edge. The premise of the CSME says equal access for all within the system, equal integration, freedom of movement for people, capital, and labor. It cannot be freedom of movement for Trinidad because they have the competitive edge. It's simply not so. You spoke of policies. To date, the same Bruce Golding did mention that at the formation of the CSME in his report, the CSME Time of Reckoning, that there was no stress test done upon the islands for us to realize the impact of the potential of the CSME on their individual economy. Policies for what? The CSME has not provided a measurement tool in order for a system to be effective, reliable, and replicable. It has to be adequately assessed. Policies must be obtained by all. Currently, 9 policies are outstanding to be signed off on. How can there be integration for all if all policies are not acknowledged? Now, secondly, you spoke of leveraging our CCIs and trade groups and, you know, Jamaica, the impetus is on. Yes, it is. That is the reason why we should move away. If our manufacturers are not given equal footing to compete, there is no established trade system. You spoke of petroleum and natural gas. In 2004, Trinidad and Tobago made an arrangement with Jamaica to sell us the same crude oil. We are yet to see it. It is not their business if we don't have this and we don't have that. We are buying. They cannot withhold resources within the CSME. That it should not be possible. The next thing they posited is the physical and monetary policies. What assessment tool did the CSME use? Please provide, Mr. Opposition Speaker, the assessment tool. We'd like to know it by date. We'd like to know the period it was done in and how it is that all nations were accounted for, what policies came from this assessment tool that made sure that there was equity within the CSME. Jamaica is disadvantaged within the CSME. We are discriminated against. There is a wide trade deficit that keeps on expanding because our exports are less than our imports in the CSME. But our opponents will tell you that is okay. Even if we were supposed to stay in the CSME, our problems will only escalate. We are given the left and they are taking the right. Today I say to my opponents, to the left,
very much for that concluding speech on behalf of the Victoria Jubilee Hospital opposition team. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude our debate, we welcome the reply speaker from the proposition, Ministry of National Security.
Honorable judges, we appreciate the opportunity to distill these matters today. There are some things that we must establish again. There's a difference between a trade agreement and a single market economy. A single market economy is a merger, a macroeconomic convergence of several countries and economies into one regional space. A trade agreement is a framework between other countries within which they have an arrangement to give and to get. Those are two different things. The CSME is a single market. And within the CSME, there are trade arrangements. And within the framework of the CSME, you are not prevented from having other trade arrangements with other countries. This is what we've been saying. Opposition has continued to say that we are not benefiting, we're not benefiting, we're not benefiting, and we need to find better trade arrangements. I am saying we're exporting only 3% to the CSME. The other 97% is with countries outside of the CSME. Are we splitting hairs between 15% importation and also 3% exports? My most worthy opponents, I believe that these aren't arguments we should be distilling today. When we look and we asked, what is a better framework? They raised up the OECS. But our evidence tells us that they are members of the CSME who are also members of the OECS. So if it is that Jamaica needs to be a part of the OECS, then Jamaica should go ahead and be a part of this OECS while benefiting from the gains that are to be derived under the CSME. The opposition went further to mention that the Jamaica's trade deficit is also an issue, and that we enjoy a trade deficit within CARICOM member states, particularly Trinidad, and that we have a surplus with Canada and America. And that's a good point. But we also have trade deficits with Venezuela, from where we get oil. Are we saying that we should not trade with Venezuela because the existence of a trade deficit introduces a market failure, and when we have trade deficit, we should not trade? Or are we saying that because the existence of the trade deficit tells us that we're being unfair? Those are not good arguments to make when Jamaica has a weak productive capacity. We have a weak productive capacity. We're a service-intensive country. We will not have a high level of imports, which is why when we send our labor force across the seas, they send back remittances. This is the reason why we enjoy these benefits. So within the CSME framework, Jamaica should rightly be leveraging the services it offers because it doesn't have a similar productive capacity as would Trinidad because they have oil. They can produce cheaper than we can. Honorable judges, we maintain the CSME is a strong framework with great potentials, and we cannot separate the CSME from the potential that it offers and the current benefits that we enjoy. To do that would be a disservice. We must look at the CSME in the light of its potential benefits and its current benefits. And when we take a look at that, we say we can stay in the CSME, also have other trade arrangements, be a part of the OECS. We would have had the best of both worlds, what the opposition says and what the proposition says, while at the same time ensuring regional macroeconomic convergence. The proposition rests. I thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, reply speaker from Team Proposition. At this time, I invite Ms. Tamika Godmighty to bring us to the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, such passion. We were transported to church where we want to stay married, and we were transported to the divorce court where we need a divorce. Let's see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, Ministry of National Security and Victoria Jubilee Hospital. They debated the moot. Be it resolved that Jamaica should remain a member of the CARICOM single market economy. Now, the judges will deliberate, and we will use that time to refresh ourselves. The next person you will hear from will be the chief adjudicator. For those online, please stay tuned.
sunshine. Thank you for rain. Thank you for joy. Thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Don't fuss and fight. Let us unite. We got one life, so let's make it right. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, it's a beautiful day. Hey. It's for me to get wiser, got to work harder. Lord, I thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Don't fuss and fight, let us unite. We got one life, so let's make it right. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, it's a beautiful day. Hey. If you got life, then you got praise. You may not have much, but you're living day by day. You can't have faith and don't wanna work. Get up off that seat and put that brains to work. Hey, hey. Lord, I thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Don't fuss and fight, let us unite. We got one life, so let's make it right. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, it's a beautiful day. Hey. Gorgeous. Yeah, man. Well, hold tight, massive. This party's gonna be alright. No fight. This one they're born. Sing. All night party. All night party. This is a all night party. All night party. Everybody say, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. This is a all night party. We alright. All night party. All night party. Yeah, man. All night party. Yes, are we gonna party out there with mass till the break of day? Well, my pipe pumping rhythm for all you. Good jam and break away. So, party people hold tight. Everything will be alright, no fight. Just hold it pathetic tonight. It is the all night. Everybody rock, yeah. Everybody singing. All night party. Only ramen. All night party. We jamming. Everybody say. Let me hear you. Hey. All night party. Just like the jamming. All night party. Everybody. I'm so tired. I'm so tired.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The debate that we just witnessed was for me reminiscent of the issues that were topical in 1961 when Jamaica contemplated whether or not it should become a part of the Caribbean Federation, or whether or not it should go on its own way. Of course, we know the outcome of that. It decided not to be a part of Federation. And of course, the Prime Minister of Trinidad, Eric Williams, said, 1 from 10 leaves not. Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate had to do with the CSME and whether or not Jamaica should stay in the CSME or whether or not we should leave the CSME. Ministry of National Security says we should stay. It's beneficial to us. It has very aspirational and lofty ideals, and we should really stay and work towards achieving those goals that are going to be beneficial for us. The ladies from the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, they tell us, well, let us really be serious and examine the current realities about what CSME has brought for us. They tell us that the CSME has brought nothing but disaster for Jamaica. Our people are discriminated against, our manufacturers find it difficult to get into the Caribbean region and their markets. And they tell us as well that we are constantly being outcompeted. It is not to our advantage. Trade deficits that exist between Jamaica and its Caribbean counterpart, significant. And so for that reason, we're not gaining an advantage economically or otherwise. Of course, the Ministry of National Security tells us not true. We have an enormous opportunity to gain a sense of collective bargaining power with respect to how we engage with the larger world, the larger global community. And the CSME has within its tenets the opportunity for us to gain in terms of how it is that our peoples are able to move across borders unimpeded and gain opportunities elsewhere. So when all that was said and done, we were left to wonder, should we accept the notion of the aspirations and the ideals embedded, enshrined within the CSME as being the basis for us to remain, or should we be considerate of the current harms and decide to leave? we thought that the aspirations of the CSME were needed to have been proven a little bit more as being likely to come true. So beyond saying to us that CSME is beautiful based on what it aspires to become, we wanted to see that it is likely to become what it intends to become, especially given the fact that it has existed for some time and the problems that exist within the CSME have continued to exist for some time, and we were not seeing from the Ministry of National Security that we're making progress towards improving and gaining better advantages for ourselves. From the vantage point of the ladies from the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, we thought that some of the argumentation that they brought may have seemed to us actually, a little bit sort of exaggerated a little, particularly when you juxtapose those ideas about, for example, the trade deficits and so forth, and when you also examine and consider the fact that we're talking about trade amounting to roughly 3 to 5% of Jamaica's overall trade activities with the world. So we're left to wonder, to what extent is this really a problem? Should we be assessing it as being a problem relatively speaking, or is it a problem in and of itself, intrinsic? There's also the question in our minds as to, so we leave the CSME, what then? What happens thereafter? Yes? Particularly in light of the fact that the Ministry of National Security kept reminding us that the CSME does not preclude us from having trade arrangements with other non-CSME countries. So in as much as that is the case, we think that that is also the case were we to be out of the CSME. Maybe other trade arrangements could be had that may prove to be more beneficial or as beneficial to Jamaica. So we wanted a little bit more engagement about the possibilities and the likely occurrences were we to leave the CSME, or what would obtain really were we to stay. A little clearer and more nuanced argumentation on those fronts would have been helpful. Ladies and gentlemen, when all is said and done, we started with a split decision reflecting the very, very, you could almost say equal exchange of ideas across the bench, across the two teams. But in the end, we arrived at a unanimous decision. And the unanimous decision goes in favor of the team from the Ministry of National Security. Sorry. Not Ministry of National Security. My bad. The Victoria Jubilee Hospital. Victoria Jubilee Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, the Victoria Jubilee Hospital. I was, a little earlier today, I was priding myself that so far I've not had a Steve Harvey moment. Seems I spoke too soon. So, Victoria Jubilee Hospital, congratulations. And very well tried, Ministry of National Security. In terms of the best debater, the best speaker, we felt that there were two speakers in the match that were very good. One from Team Proposition, Ministry of National Security, the other from Team Opposition, Victoria Jubilee Hospital. From Victoria Jubilee Hospital, it was the second speaker. And from the Ministry of National Security, the second speaker as well. And he was especially good when he came back and presented a sterling reply. Now, in the very end, ladies and gentlemen, we agreed, the panel agreed, that the overall best speaker is the speaker from the Ministry of National Security. Indeed, that is the second speaker. All right, so with that, let's give them both a round of applause. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I turn over to Mrs. Gunmighty to facilitate the presentation of a gift to the best debater and to bring us to a close.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Steve, Jermaine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We will have another matchup in the final match of our quarterfinal, and it should be starting in a few moments, so you may stay with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.